If you guys enjoy what I do, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps the channel and it's free and easy to do. Before we get started with today's video, I have an announcement to make. After years of telling other people's stories, I finally released one of my own. My novel Eternal Reign is available now in both ebook and paperback format for those of you who are like me and prefer to collect physical media. You can grab a copy right now on Amazon through the link in the description of this video. And now back to our regularly scheduled program. The Mages Guild of Tamriel is always recruiting new members, probably because so many of them die or disappear when spells go wrong. But since no one will turn down the chance to learn how to set people on fire with their fingertips, you join up. And it doesn't take long for Velast, a senior member of the guild, to call on you for help with an assignment. She's the keeper of all things lore for the guild, which officially makes her my favorite person. And since books are extremely important to mages, her position is second only to the guildmaster Vanis. So a request from her isn't exactly something that you can ignore, so you head to the guild hall in Daggerfall to see what she's got in store for you. Velast has heard that there are some ancient books in some even older ruins called Xylem, and she wants you to go there and collect them for her. It doesn't sound like the most difficult of jobs, but considering the fact that ancient ruins could be filled with everything from smugglers and pirates to zombies and demons, there's no telling what will try to eat you while you're there. There are 4 clearly magical books there, but when you grab one of them, one that doesn't have any words written in it, the ghost of a mage named Shalador appears and tells you to let Velast know that fire will show you what's written on the pages. He also thinks she'll know what to do once she hears that. So with your prizes in hand, you head back to the guild. Velast is very surprised to hear that Shalador showed up. The man is a legend among mages, and he wasn't wrong about her understanding his message about how to reveal the words in the book. In the first era, the mages would use an ink that would only appear when they covered their writing in a magical fire. That's a good way to keep people from learning your secrets, but the guild hall has a brazier that burns with the exact type of fire that you need, so Velast has you throw the book inside of it. She probably made you do it just in case it blew up, but it doesn't. The words do appear, but you can't read them. Velast can read some of it, and she sees a spell that would let you summon the ghost of Shalador. Since he was pretty much the most powerful mage in his day, he'll likely be able to help you decipher the book. Granted, summoning him will link his mind to yours, which will let him talk to you whenever he wants. I have enough voices in my head, so I wouldn't be all that excited about adding another one, but apparently members of the Mages Guild are okay with that because you immediately agree to perform the summoning ritual. It works, and Shalador does link with you. He thinks that you're the perfect person to help him with this final mission, but it's going to be extremely difficult. The world is at war, but Shalador is planning on making a safe haven where mages can study their art without getting pulled into the world's nonsense. He actually made the place hundreds of years ago, but it got stolen and taken to a place called the Shivering Isles, which is not a place that anyone should ever visit. The only way to get Shalador's island back is to find 4 books, which is what he needs you for. Those books are in a place called Cheesemonger's Hollow, which is in the top 5 on the list of stupidest names for places, but it's one of the homes of the insane god Sheogorath. The guy is the god of madness, and he is extremely unpredictable, so there's no telling what he'll do. But because self-preservation isn't high on your priority list, and Shalador is already dead, you agree to go with him, and he opens a portal to the Hollow. The first thing you run into in the weirdly named place is Sheogorath's manservant. He seems relatively normal to say he works for a crazy guy, and when you tell him that you're there for Shalador's books, he agrees to let you go inside after a little test. Well, it's not all that little. He opens a portal that lets Daedra out that try to kill you, and they won't stop coming until you close the portal. Once you've sealed it, he lets you head into the Hollow to get the books. Apparently it's all happening under Sheogorath's orders because he knows that you're there. He sends his personal monster to fight you right before you grab the books, for his personal entertainment of course. When you kill it, he lets you take one of the books, but he makes the other 3 vanish and shows up to talk to you in person, which will probably be anything but good. The Daedric Prince remembers Shalador, and he knows exactly what the man is trying to get back. Since he has something that you want, he figures that it'll be fun to turn your book collecting into a little contest. He'll give you a few random tasks that will likely kill you, and if you live, you get a book. Since you don't exactly have a choice but to play along if you want the things, you agree. Sheogorath doesn't think the game will be as fun without Shalador, so proving that he really does have godlike powers, he makes Shalador appear so he can talk to him. He lets the dead mage know that the 2 of you have made a deal, which Shalador is suspicious of since Sheogorath's deals always have some type of hook in them. And he wasn't wrong. The god put a curse on the books, making it impossible for Shalador to ever read them. After delivering that not too happy bit of information and shrugging off an attack from the very unhappy mage, Sheogorath disappears, leaving you and the ghost alone to figure out how you're going to get the other books. Velas will be able to translate the book that you have, but it'll take longer than it would have for Shalador, and since there's not much else you can do at the moment, the mage teleports you back to her so you can let her know what happened and she can get to work. When you tell her everything that's happened, she's not exactly thrilled to know that she won't have Shalador's help with the book. But she gets to work and she promises to send someone to find you once she's finished. When Velas has figured out what the book says, Shalador tracks you down so you can get ready to deal with your first trial. Since books are Velas' life, she's been enjoying working on the little project, but the whole process has made her tired. The book seems to be nothing more than a collection of children's stories, but each story holds secrets about ancient magic and history, which shows that while Sheogorath is clearly nuts, he's also a genius for being able to create something so sophisticated. Which means there's probably more to the trials than what you see on the surface. Shalador has been having trouble opening a portal back to Sheogorath's realm, but he's come up with a solution to that problem, so he manages to tear open a hole to the Shivering Isles, and you step through to where Haskell is waiting for you again. His master wants you to find some items for him before he'll give you the second book. One's a staff and the other's a fork because you're not dealing with the most normal of people. The fork is magical for someone like a god, but for you it'll just be a regular eating utensil. One that Haskell opened a portal directly to for your convenience. Granted, the portal might not go directly to the thing since it got lost in Skyrim during the previous era a very long time ago. The thing was in the tomb of a dragon priest, so naturally you showing up and trying to take something causes all of the corpses to get up and try to kill you. After fighting through no small number of undead, you find the fork and Haskell sends you to Hammerfell where he thinks the staff is in the hands of a long-dead prince. The man had been a great warrior 1,000 years ago, which means he'll be a dangerous zombie too. His followers had used magical seals to guard his resting place, but between you and Shalador, getting past them and his guards isn't all that rough. Once you've re-killed the man and his guardians, you take Sheogorath's staff and Haskell brings you back to the Isle so you can talk to his master. After he makes you use the staff, which is weirdly named the Wabbajack, to turn a few people into very random things, the god honors his word and gives you the book, which instantly takes you back to the Mages Guild. The second book is called The Circus of Cheerful Slaughter, which Velas thinks is an interesting title, but that's probably because she won't have to do whatever weirdness the book tells you to. Either way, she gets to work on translating it. Figuring out what the book says isn't all that hard for her, but figuring out what the book wants you to do is a little bit rougher this time. Mainly because it doesn't make sense. She figures that since you're the one who dealt with the insane god, the translated version might make sense when you read it. It doesn't, but that doesn't matter because as soon as you touch it, it takes you to a creepy forest where Sheogorath is waiting for you. For this trial, he wants you to perform a play that he wrote about the three alliances being at war while the Mages Guild tries not to get drawn into it, and you keep them out of it by murdering the different alliance leaders. For the most part, it doesn't make any sense. Pretty much like everything else the crazy god does. But in the midst of it all, he shows you a bit about Velas' history and how she was so talented that Vanus was all too eager to accept her into the guild. He also shows signs that he's been watching her struggle to decipher his books, which proves that he is very interested in her, which is definitely not a good thing. You also get to see how Sheogorath tricked Shalador into trading the island sanctuary he made for a book called the Folium Discognitum, which was not a good trade, and he vowed to get back his island. He got so focused on that mission that he ended up driving his own wife away. After you finish the play, which ends with you fighting to save your mage friends, the crazy god gives you book number 3, which drags you back to the Mages Guild. Velas saw you disappear, and since you came back with another book, she figures you must have completed another trial. One that she doesn't want to know anything about, but she is eager to get started on translating this new book. She's gotten faster with the translation, so it doesn't take long for her to figure out what the next trial is, but Shalador thinks her constantly working with the books is doing something to her. There's nothing any of you can do about it, but the mage wants you to keep an eye on her just in case. Your next trial is in a place called the Chateau of the Ravenous Rodent, which is in the part of the Shivering Isles called Dementia, which does not sound even remotely inviting. But Velas opens up a portal to take you to the place, and you step through to start the final trial. Shalador goes with you for the last trial, but Sheogorath doesn't want him there, so he boots him from the realm before telling you about your last test. The place he's brought you to is his family estate that he's been passing down to himself from generation to generation. He brings guests there from time to time, and the first thing he wants you to do is evict the one that doesn't belong there while avoiding getting eaten since the other guests are literal cannibals. Once that's done, he sends you through a maze full of monsters that's also very dark, because monsters are even more scary when you can't see them. After that, he sends you into the mansion, which is full of crazy people who try to kill you. He wants you to kill his uncle Leo, who had a weird rat fetish. Since it's better to not ask questions that you don't want to know the answers to, you kill the guy and Sheogorath gives you the last book, one that he thinks Velas will really benefit from reading. It doesn't take long for her to translate it, which has Shalador super excited since that means he can finally get his island back. But reading the book seems to have changed Velas. She randomly says nonsense statements very much like Sheogorath, but she claims to be fine, and she'll be even better once she finally gets to see this island. So using the 4 books together, Shalador is able to pull his island back to Tamriel. The place is supposed to be a lush sanctuary filled with beautiful structures and landscapes, like a resort for mages to go and get away from the troubles of the world. But as soon as he summons it, Shalador knows that something is wrong. You and Velas follow him through the portal to Ivea and find that Sheogorath had filled the island with Daedra. The only way the place will ever be usable is if you clear out the creatures, so the 3 of you head to the Grand Hall at the center of the island so you can see just how bad the situation is. As a surprise to no one, you find Sheogorath waiting for you there. Shalador actually tries to attack the god to get him to leave the island, but that obviously does nothing because he's a god. He didn't break his word. He said that if you completed his trials, you could have the island. He just didn't tell you that he had filled it with creatures. He recommends that you get written contracts in the future if you plan on making deals with people. That way you can iron out all of the details. It shouldn't be a big deal. He figures you and Velas can close the portals and stop the Daedra without too much trouble. He figures she would have seen this coming since he specifically cursed his books because he knew that the only person who could read them was her. He clearly wants her for something, but you won't find out what until you deal with the creatures, so you get to work on shutting down the portals. The god barricades himself inside of the Grand Hall, so while you and Velas work, Shalador puts his efforts into breaking through the god's barrier. As the 2 of you close the portals, Velas steadily goes more and more insane, and by the time you get into the building, she's gone completely nuts, thinking butterflies are dancing in her head, so you have to face the god alone. He has you fight Haskell, who among all of his other duties is apparently a bodyguard too. After you beat the man, Sheogorath agrees to leave the island, but he plans on taking Velas with him to the Shivering Isles. It's a place for crazy people, and the spells he put on the books were specifically made to break the woman's mind and make her a perfect new permanent resident of his domain. But he decides to give you the choice on whether she comes with him or not. He offers you the same book of power that Shalador had traded his island for. If you decide to give up the power that the book offers, he'll fix Velas' mind and leave. Only a fool would trust any artifact that someone like Sheogorath offers, so you do the smart thing and choose to save Velas. True to his word, the god fixes her mind and leaves, giving the mages a place where they can truly be neutral and train in their arts without ever having to worry about being drawn into the wars of the world. Maybe. This concludes the story of the Mages Guild. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Donate to the channel if you can, and I'll see you all next time. The elves of Thedas aren't exactly treated well. They used to be slaves to the humans, but even though they've been freed, the whole equality thing is lacking. The ones who choose to live in cities are put into segregated sections called alienages, and they do what they can to get by. Even though their situation is far from pleasant, the elves in the city of Denerim have built a very close community that they're proud of. You've lived in that community your entire life, and today just so happens to be a very important day for you. You're getting married, and even though you're not all that excited about it, your cousin Shiani wasn't going to let you sleep through the day, especially since you and your other cousin Soris are both getting married, and your brides have shown up early. Shiani runs off to get things set up while your father lets you know that even though you're supposed to share everything with your spouse, it may not be a good idea to tell her all about how your mother taught you various ways to murder people with pointy objects before she got killed. It wouldn't do to make yourself look like a violent individual, so you agree to keep that little detail a secret before you head off to meet up with Soris. He's not exactly happy about doing the whole wedding thing either, but there's really no way to avoid it, so the 2 of you head off to meet your brides. Before you get the chance, a group of humans show up, and they're not exactly there to be friendly, so Shiani does the only sensible thing and bashes one of them in the head with a vase. Unfortunately, the man she hit is Von Urian, the son of the man who runs the entire city, so even though his friends have to carry him out of the alienage, it's pretty obvious that he's gonna be back to cause problems later. Once you and Soris meet your brides and they head off to get ready, the 2 of you see another human, and this one is carrying weapons and looks like he knows how to use them. Not really wanting to deal with any more trouble, the 2 of you go to send him away, but this human is actually friends with Valendrian, the leader of the alienage. The man's name is Duncan, and he's the leader of the Grey Wardens. The Wardens are a group that specializes in fighting the Darkspawn whenever they attack the surface world. Those attacks are called a blight, and one of them is happening now, so King Kalen has called the Wardens to Ostagar to help fight the Horde with his army, and Duncan's out recruiting new Wardens to join the fight. Valendrian is fine with helping him with his recruiting after the wedding. Unfortunately, while the ceremony is going on, the man Shiani knocked out comes back with a lot of soldiers. He kidnaps a lot of the women, including Shiani, for some very unpleasant reasons, knocks you unconscious for talking to him, and leaves. When you wake up, Soros lets you know that Vaughn took all of the women who were in the wedding party to his palace, and all of the elves are obviously upset. They want to go after the women, but if an army of elves storm the palace, everyone from the alienage will end up dead. Under normal circumstances, Valendrian would tell everyone to just wait it out, but he's heard stories about what Vaughn and his friends do to the women they bring to the palace. They don't tend to live through the experience. Normally he only takes 1 or 2 women, but since his dad's out of the city, he's gotten a lot bolder. You and Soros aren't willing to let your brides-to-be and your cousin suffer that fate, and one of the elves that works as a servant in the palace thinks that he can give you a chance to stage a rescue. He's pretty sure that he can sneak the 2 of you into the palace since no one will notice a few extra elves running around. But if you're seen in an area that you're not supposed to be in, being unarmed won't end well for you. So before you head into the palace, Duncan lets you use some of his weapons, so the 2 of you head off to save your friends. It takes about 2 seconds for your silent infiltration to turn into an all-out assault. But fortunately, the training that you were supposed to keep a secret pays off, making you and Soros more than a match for anyone who tries to bar your way. Unfortunately, you weren't fast enough to save everyone. Some of the women are already dead by the time you reach Vaughn's room. When the man sees that you're covered in a lot of blood that doesn't belong to you, he tries to make a deal with you. But even the fact that his father might retaliate against all of your people once he gets back isn't enough to stop you from killing him for what he's done. Shiani's glad that you killed him, but that won't erase what's already happened to her. Most of the others hadn't been hurt yet, so with the survivors in tow, you head back to the alienage. There's no way you could have possibly thought your little escapade would go unnoticed. Before you even have the chance to plan your escape, the city guard shows up to arrest the culprits. Since someone is going to go down for what happened, you keep Soros' involvement a secret and take the blame for the attack. The guards barely believe that one elf could have done so much damage, but they accept your confession and get ready to take you in. Instead of letting you rot in a prison cell until the day of your execution, Duncan uses the Grey Warden's right of conscription to force the guards to hand you over to him. They don't like it, but they can't override his authority, so they let him take you under one condition. He gets you out of the city immediately. So after you say your goodbyes to your friends and family, Duncan takes you to Ostagar so you can join the Grey Wardens in their war with the Darkspawn. And that's where we're going to stop for today. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it, comment, share it, and subscribe. Grab a copy of my novel on your way out, and I'll see you all next time. The war between the angels and the prime evils have been going on forever, but it will eventually end. According to Deckard Cain's research, when the end times comes, a sign will appear in the sky and justice will fall on the world of men before the armies of heaven and hell have their ultimate clash. He thinks that time is coming soon, but his niece Leah thinks he's just a crazy old man. Right up until the moment a star falls on the cathedral that they're in, and her uncle falls in the very deep hole that it made. The fallen star causes a lot of weird things to happen in the land around Tristram. Namely, a lot of the dead start to come back to life. This causes various heroes to come to the land in search of the star, and you're one of them. When you get to Tristram after fighting your way through a lot of zombies, the guard captain who's trying to hold the city against the hordes of undead tell you where Leah is. Since she's the only survivor of the initial impact, she's the only person who can tell you exactly where the star fell. Leah thinks her uncle is still alive in the depths below the cathedral, even though he should be very dead from the fall alone, even if we ignore the fact that he got hit by a meteor. She had tried to look for him, but the undead had already started waking up, so instead of waiting around to get eaten, she'd come back to the town to get the militia to help. Anyone bitten turns into a zombie, so unless someone does something about the things that are summoning the creatures, it'll be hard to even get to the cathedral. So you agree to help save the town so you can find the source of all of this. Since most of the militia is dead, Captain Rumford is happy to get your help. There are very specific zombies called Wretched Mothers that are constantly puking out more zombies, which is highly disgusting, but getting rid of them should stop the swarm from overtaking the city. Once you've done that and given the town some breathing room, Leah decides to head out to rescue her uncle alone. Since helping her will take you where you want to go, you decide to tag along. The militia had locked the way to the cathedral before they'd gotten overrun, and the key to that gate is probably in Leah's mother Adria's old hut, which is where most of the militia got killed, so that's where the two of you head. Adria had died when Leah was a baby, so her uncle had raised her. He's the only family she has, which is why she refuses to believe he's dead until she sees his body. She never knew her father, but she'd heard he was a great warrior who died when Tristram had fell to the demons. The people had claimed that Adria was a witch, but Leah hadn't believed them. However, when you get to her hut and find her underground cellar, it starts to look like the people may have been right about her based on some of the very witchy things that you find down there. You don't get to do too much snooping around before the zombified Tristram militia attack you and force you to kill them for a second time. When the fighting's done, Leah finds the key you need and her mother's old journal. She wants to read it, but she wants to save her uncle first. But since you can move faster on your own anyway, you tell her to find out what she can about her mother while you go to save her uncle, if he's still alive. When you make it to the lower levels of the cathedral, you actually find Deckard Cain alive and being chased by a small horde of skeletons that are being led by a much larger and clearly more powerful one that claims to have been resurrected by the falling star's power. After you save Deckard Cain's life by killing the things that are after him, you let the old man know that his niece sent you and she's alive and well. He's glad to hear that she made it out of the cathedral, and after showing you a pathway out of the depths, the two of you head back to Tristram to talk about the fallen star and this resurrected skeleton king that's blocking your path to it. Leah's happy to see that her uncle did survive, but despite what's been happening, she still doesn't believe his story about the falling star being a sign of the end of the world. Whether it is or isn't is irrelevant for the moment, because regardless of what the fallen star means, you still have to deal with the skeleton king. Before he died, he was Leoric, the king of Tristram, who had been corrupted by Diablo's power. He caused a lot of problems for the people before he was finally put down, and now that he's back, he will probably do the same. Even if he was content with staying where he is and not bothering anyone else, you have to go through him to get to the fallen star, so that's what you're going to do. Putting the Skeleton King back in the ground won't work without his old crown though. Fortunately, Hadric, the town blacksmith, knows where it is, so you track him down. He's a bit busy with a not so pleasant task at the moment, so he doesn't have time to talk about the crown. Everyone who's been bitten has been put into the town cellar, and he has to put them all down. And one of them is his wife. After you help him with a very unpleasant job, he lets you know that the crown is buried with his grandfather, Leoric's former chancellor. The crypt where the crown is buried is full of the undead, and when you try to take it, the chancellor's spirit wakes up to try and stop you. He knows that the crown can revive Leoric, and he doesn't want that. He doesn't realize that you're trying to reattach his soul to his body so you can kill him. But explaining things to ghosts isn't something that ever works out well, so you kill the spirit and take the broken crown back to Hadric. He fixes it, and Deckard Cain lets you know that the crown can unlock the sealed door in the room where you saved him. That will lead you to the royal crypts where Leoric's body is. Putting the crown on his head will reunite his spirit and body. Then you can do what you need to do to finish him off. The crown was obviously not the only way to get into the lower levels of the cathedral, because when you get there, a Templar named Cormac is being tortured by some weird cult members. After you save him and he rearms himself, he lets you know that he's there to kill the Skeleton King too, and the only way to get to him is to go through a former member of his order named John Dar. Since you're both on the same mission, he decides to tag along. Once you kill the former Templar turned necromancer, you make your way down into the crypts and confront the Skeleton King. Once the insane king has been put down for good, you find the spot where the fallen star had hit. It turns out that the thing that fell out of the sky was a man. He claims he came with a warning about something bad that was coming, but he can't remember what he was supposed to say or where he came from, so you take him to Deckard Cain to see if he can figure it out. The fact that the strange man survived falling from the sky like a meteor makes it pretty obvious that he's not a human, since any human who did even half of that would be very dead. The only thing that the man can remember is that when he fell, he had a very powerful magic sword with him, but it broke into 3 pieces. Cain thinks that fixing the sword will restore the man's memories, which means you now have yet another mysterious item to hunt for. The goat men have been acting strange in the nearby fields, so Leah figures that maybe a piece of the sword could have landed near them. So you head out there to see if you can find it. A piece of the sword has landed in one of their caves, but you weren't the first one to find it. A group of cultists, like the ones you found near the Skeleton King, are trying to do something to the sword. So you stop them in the easiest way possible, and that's by brutally unaliving them. With their ritual interrupted, their leader Magda appears, claiming that the sword belongs to her coven. She sends more of her minions at you, so you deal with them before taking the sword and heading back to Cain to let him know that you're not the only one searching for it. Cain knows about Magda's coven. It's what's left of the religion called the Triune that worship the prime evils. There are 2 of them that are still alive, Asmodan and Belial. So if either of them are behind what the witch is doing, things are about to start getting very, very dangerous. Before the witch left, she had said that another shard had fallen where only the ancients tread, information she wouldn't have shared unless she wanted you to go after it, so she's probably setting up some type of trap, one that you are definitely going to walk right into. Her words about the ancients makes Leah think about the drowned temple in the festering woods that Deckard Cain had told her about. The temple had been the home of the Nephilim, and since Leah seems to remember what he told her about this place, Cain sends her to help you on this mission. On the way there, you run into Lyndon, a thief who has ended up on the wrong side of the Thieves Guild. He joins your party after he realizes that the rare relic that he'd swindled a farm girl out of by pretending to be in love with her is just a fake. Cormac doesn't want him traveling with you since the guy isn't exactly trustworthy, but as long as he points his arrows where you want him to, the two of you will get along fine. At the drowned temple, you run into a spirit named Alaric that guards the place. Only a Nephilim can open the way, and even though people think they're extinct, the door opens for you. Inside, the spirits of the Nephilim try to kill you. After they fail, Alaric makes it pretty clear that he believes that you're a Nephilim, which would explain why you're so strong. Regardless, the second sword shard is in the temple, and so is a projection of Magda. She recognizes Leah as Adria's daughter, and she can sense the power that she has within her. The way she talks makes it sound like Leah's mother is a lot less dead than people thought. After dealing with Magda's cultists and taking the second sword piece, you head back to Tristram to see if there are any leads on the last piece. The amnesiac who fell out of the sky remembers seeing a piece of the sword fall toward a fishing village, and since the only one that's nearby is Wortham, you hop on the ferry to head over there, but it won't be a pleasant visit because it looks like the village is on fire. The village is being attacked by Magda's coven, so after you put them and the demons that they summon out of their misery, the priest who was hiding in the chapel lets you know that they found the hilt of the sword days ago, and they'll be happy to get rid of it since nothing good has happened to them since they found it. While he takes you to where he left it, Leah heads back to Tristram to check on her uncle. It turns out that Magda had already taken the third piece, and while you were trying to save Wortham, she went to Tristram and took the other pieces as well as Deckard Cain, the stranger, and Leah, so you race back to Cain's house to rescue them. When you get there, Magda is torturing all three of them, trying to force Cain to use his Herodric arts to put the sword back together, all because Belial ordered her to. Seeing her uncle getting tortured causes Leah's powers to burst out of her, killing all of the cultists. Magda's not stupid enough to stick around and die, so instead of taking the sword, she takes the man who it belongs to. Before he dies from his wounds, Cain puts the sword back together, and he realizes that it's a weapon from the high heavens, and the man who it belongs to is an angel. He tells Leah to listen to what he wrote in his journal because the end of the world really is happening. Then he dies. Leah feels pretty bad since she knows she had the power to save her uncle, but she doesn't know how to control it. Regardless of how she feels, you know that the person who's really at fault is Magda and Belial, two people who Leah really wants dead now. Cain's journal said that an angel would fall from the heavens right as the end of days began, so according to him, the man Magda took is currently the single most important person on the planet, so you have to save him and restore his memories. Leah's powers had shown her where Magda was planning on taking him. She's in the highlands over Wortham, and you'll have to pass through a not-so-pleasant cave to get to her. After fighting an army of spiders and their queen, and saving a woman who was about to be eaten, she lets you know that she saw some people dragging a man to Leoric's manor house in the area, so you fight your way into the manor that is full of people and things that are trying to kill you. Magda knew you were coming, but she didn't expect you to tear through her forces so fast. She hasn't had a chance to finish off the angel yet since it's not exactly easy to kill something that can survive falling from heaven, so she sends a really big demon known as the Butcher after you. Once it gets put out of its misery, you free the angel. He's dying from his wounds, but when you hand him his sword, it fully heals him and brings his memories back. He's Tyrael, the Angel of Justice, and he had come to warn humanity that Belial and Asmodan are getting ready to launch an all-out war against them. Belial has already taken over the nation of Chaldeum, and he needs to be stopped before he can gather more resources. It won't be easy to find him, but if you track Magda's coven, she'll likely lead you right to her boss. Leah wants to come, but she's not leaving until after she puts her uncle to rest. Even after all that she's seen, she still doesn't believe everything her uncle said, so Tyrael shows her a vision of how it all started. He had wanted to help the mortals, but the rules of heaven forbid it. Imperius, the leader of the angels, wanted to kill him for going against their rules, but Tyrael believed so strongly in what he was doing that he ripped off his own wings, turning himself mortal and falling to earth by choice, all because he believed the same thing that Deckard Cain did. Humanity is the key to saving the world, and if an angel was willing to go to such lengths to achieve the same goal as her uncle, there must be some truth to all of his stories. So they lay Deckard Cain to rest and head to Chaldeum to hunt for one of the prime evils. This concludes the story of Diablo 3's Act 1. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it, comment, share it, and subscribe. Grab a copy of my novel on your way out, and I'll see you all next time. Yuffie Kisaragi is a ninja from Wutai, sent to Midgar under orders to sneak into Shinra headquarters to steal some super powerful materia. To do that, she's supposed to team up with the terrorist or freedom fighter group depending on your point of view, Avalanche. The whole point of the mission is to prove to Shinra that Wutai is not a nation to be taken lightly. But unfortunately, they sent a girl who's, to put it delicately, a bit of an idiot. She didn't remember exactly where she was supposed to meet up with Avalanche, so she snuck into the city in a mostly abandoned location that's full of some very dangerous creatures. Fortunately, while Yuffie's a bit of an idiot, she can actually fight, so she manages to make it to Sector 7 just in time to catch a news broadcast from Shinra. Recently, Avalanche attacked Mako Reactor number 5, but Shinra has managed to get everything back under control. They're still hunting for the culprit since they also blew up Mako Reactor number 1 a little while earlier. Yuffie's excited to see that Avalanche is putting in a bit of work against the giant planet-destroying corporation, but she thinks that she could do a better job, something she says way too loudly considering the fact that she's in a crowded area talking about committing acts of terror. Fortunately for her, her contact, a man named Jija, finds her, which isn't hard since she's the only person wearing a Moogle poncho, and takes her to the group's hideout. One of them anyway. He introduces her to some of the people she'll be working with, Polk, Nayo, and a guy named Billy Bob. But the person she was expecting to meet, Sonon, isn't there. He made it to the city a few days ago according to Nayo, but he's been enjoying himself out in the city, so there's no telling when he'll get back. Jiju wants Yuffie to wait at the hideout for Sonon while he heads off to pick up their Shinra IDs. The company treats all materia like weapons, so they'll probably have it stored somewhere in the advanced weaponry division, deep in the basement of the building, and Yuffie will need a fake ID to get in there. The building itself is the giant one in the middle of Midgar, so it's not exactly hard to find. But it is pretty hard to sneak into since it's highly guarded, and security is even more diligent than normal because of all the terrorist activity. It'll probably be a good idea for Yuffie to wait until things settle down a bit before she tries to breach their defenses. Instead of just sitting in the room, she wanders around the city a bit, and when she makes it back, Sonon shows up. He was trained to fight by Yuffie's father, but he'd never actually seen her before in person since she doesn't really like her dad all that much. She's completely different from what he expected, but he's perfectly fine with letting her lead the mission. A pigeon brings a message saying that some packages that Nayo's people have been waiting for have come in, and the spot to pick them up isn't that far away from there. Since they need to check out more of the city anyway, Yuffie and Sonon tag along. They have to go through a very rough part of town, which is why Nayo wanted them to come along anyway. Part of what they're picking up are more ID cards for Yuffie and Sonon, since you need a lot of them to get anywhere in Midgar. The entire place was built by Shinra, so the city runs like a very big office building broken into different sectors that can't be accessed without the proper credentials. While they're walking, they catch sight of Barrett and Tifa coming back to 7th Heaven after their attack on Reactor 5. And Barrett's pretty upset that the president of Shinra claimed that Avalanche was working with Wutai to carry out the attacks, all so they can justify retaliating against the nation. What's just as bad is the fact that a guy named Don Corneo has his people out looking for them. Barrett doesn't want to waste time on Corneo, but Tifa heads off to deal with him anyway. When Yuffie hears that they were the ones who blew up the reactor, she wants to chat with them. But since it's very likely that Shinra is after them, it would be a good way to ruin their mission fast if they get involved with that group. Nayo's not really a fan of the actions of Barrett's little subgroup of Avalanche, since they aren't all that worried about collateral damage as long as Shinra falls. But since the company did major damage to her home, Yuffie kinda agrees with them, which is part of why Nayo's group teamed up with Yuffie in the first place. They wanted to keep her from working with Barrett because that would have just increased the destruction they'd cause to Midgar. She wants to take Shinra down, but not at the cost of her home. She is a little curious about this so-called ultimate materia that Yuffie wants, but what it does doesn't necessarily matter all that much. Sneaking into Shinra's HQ and stealing their most precious possession will prove that even though they've hurt Wutai, they haven't beaten them yet. On the way to the pickup spot, some members of Corneo's gang go to recruit Nayo to be one of Corneo's brides, which means exactly what you think it does, so Yuffie with some backup from Sonon beats them up. But not because they were trying to take Nayo to become an OnlyFans model. It was more because they called Yuffie a little kid and weren't interested in her. I told you before that she was kinda dumb. Before the fight leads to anyone's death, another of Corneo's henchmen comes running up saying that a really hot chick fell right into their lap and she's actually eager to go with them to Corneo's mansion. They leave, which gives Yuffie and the others a clear place to wait for their contact, save for a guy who's wearing a robe and walking around with Mako poisoning, which is what happens when someone can't become a member of Soldier, or they fall prey to any number of Shinra's other experiments. Their contact shows up with Yuffie and Sonon's IDs for their train ride, but they'll still need Avalanche to help them get through security, so it's not time to infiltrate the Shinra building just yet. And plans change even further when a messenger pigeon with a note from Jija tells the three of them to meet him at the Sector 7 pillar fast. The three of them see him getting chased by some Shinra soldiers, so Yuffie and Sonon follow after them while Nayo goes to tell the others what happened. The man is pretty good at running from the cops. Apparently he's done it before. The fact that he leads them through a monster-infested factory doesn't help their situation, but it doesn't help Yuffie catch him either since everything is trying to eat them all. His run causes the other soldiers to call for backup, and they eventually catch up to him and start trying to beat information out of him. So Sonon wants to cause a distraction while Yuffie frees him. But she doesn't understand that ninjas are supposed to be stealthy, so she jumps up into plain view and not only removes her Moogle poncho and shouts out her name, but she falls off of the beams. Fall damage apparently doesn't exist in this world either, so she doesn't die, and she gets the soldiers' attention like she needed to. That gives Sonon time to free Jija, but it also causes the guards to call in a giant armed robot centipede complete with a lot of weapons. Not really sure why Shinra decided to go with that design, but the thing does put up a decent fight. Still, it gets taken down by 2 people, so how good was the weapon really? Jija is fine and he's able to hand Yuffie what he got for them. Employee ID cards that will let them walk right into the Shinra building and access any floor. He thinks the 2 of them should hurry up and do whatever they're planning, because he's heard that Shinra plans on destroying the entirety of Sector 7. That's not their issue, but he does plan on telling Barrett about it. Since that's taken care of, Yuffie and Sonon head back to Nio's base to get their help getting on the train, but while she was gone, Nio's base got discovered by the military. Fortunately, none of them were there to get caught, so Yuffie heads straight to the train. The train platform is packed, and since the Sector 5 attack, that station is outright closed, so the trains aren't running on schedule, which means when they do run, everyone tries to catch a ride, so Yuffie and Sonon squeeze into the very packed train. Yuffie isn't all that good with the motion of the train, which reminds Sonon of his sister Melfi. She would get sick on everything from boats to chocobos, and like Sonon, she had trained under Yuffie's dad, but near the end of the war with Shinra, one of their mechs attacked a crowd of people, and Melfi died trying to save them. That's why Sonon wants Shinra gone, and that's the least of their atrocities. At that very moment, President Shinra is talking to 2 of his executives, Heidegger and Reeve, about their plan to destroy Sector 7 entirely by dropping the plate onto the entire area, which would kill about 50,000 people. Reeve doesn't want to do it, but it's not up for debate. The president is going to do it, and there's nothing that anyone can do to stop it. The Shinra building is full of people, including reporters who are always annoying, but that makes it easy for Yuffie and Sonon to get on the elevator. And that's where things stop being easy, because Scarlet, one of the top brass at Shinra, gets on the elevator with them. She immediately recognizes them as being from Wutai and taunts them a bit, but for once Yuffie is smart enough not to take the bait. That doesn't change the fact that Scarlet locks them in and forces them to wander through her domain. She's the one in charge of the Advanced Weaponry Division, and she's gonna test her new toys on her foreign visitors. Sonon wants to kill her personally since her tech killed his sister, but there's no way to do that without going through the woman's gauntlet. She throws all types of stuff at the 2 of them, and she's somewhat impressed by their skills, but she's more interested in why they're there in the first place. For them to be as good as they are, they're clearly ninjas, so she wants her people to figure out what they're planning while still trying to kill them, of course. After wandering around a bit, the 2 of them finally come across what may be the material they're looking for, but it turns out to be a dud, and a perfect spot for an ambush. They survive the fight, something else that Scarlet and her people watch. With as much as Yuffie has blurted it out, Scarlet's people found out that the pair are after materia, which the woman thinks is completely insane. Scarlet figured they'd be after something more interesting, but since she knows, she decides to talk to them through a very large hologram that freaks Yuffie out. She sends them through another area, claiming that they'll find what they want there, but it's clearly a trap, one that they'll willingly spring. Scarlet sent the 2 of them into the area where they test their most dangerous equipment, and after they cut through it all, they reached the area where Scarlet wanted them to be so she could test her newest bit of battle armor. Despite having made an impressive weapon, it can't match the ninja's skills. Scarlet's already figured out what she should do better next time, and even though the machine was beaten, she's still not worried, because now that she's used the intruders for what she needed, she called for reinforcements, and they aren't coming just to detain them. She called for one of the more dangerous living weapons, a man named Nero, but of course she refuses to tell Yuffie and Sonon what she's done. She is a little shocked that Yuffie knows about the special materia that Shinra has been working on, but she figures that means there's a mole somewhere in the organization. But for the moment, that doesn't matter, since the materia isn't ready. They had to delay it to move forward with the plan to drop the plate on Sector 7. Then they'll blame Avalanche and Wutai. Yuffie wants to get more information out of her, but some of Shinra's more advanced soldiers show up, and the pair are forced to fight until they're pushed into a combat simulator that Scarlet sets to the highest setting, while Nero and the others wait outside of the door. The guy is insane and uses his very odd powers to kill his own allies because stories still haven't found a better way to show just how evil someone is other than having them kill their own people. Yuffie and Sonon overcome the weird computer-generated creatures and step out of the room to see all of the dead soldiers. Nero has killed even more of them, and because Shinra thinks of all of its people as nothing more than test subjects, some of their researchers stand outside of the room in what they think is a secure zone to observe the battle and to keep Nero contained. The fighting causes his powers to go out of control, so they try to restrain him, but he breaks free, puts Yuffie through a window in a way that definitely broke all of her, and kills the scientist for interfering, before going back to fighting Sonon and Yuffie. As the battle drags on, he grows more and more unstable, and the weird darkness that he's using starts to cover everything, but Yuffie and her partner manage to beat him. He seems happy to actually lose, so he disappears into darkness, but as soon as the pair gets to the elevator, he reappears and attacks them from behind. Yuffie doesn't see the attack coming, but Sonon does, and he gets impaled so Yuffie can escape. She's distraught over Sonon dying to save her, but things get worse as she makes it outside of the Shinra building just in time to watch the Sector 7 plate get destroyed, meaning it's very likely that everyone she'd met on her mission is dead. That just makes her more determined to take Shinra down. And fortunately, she's not the only one to survive. Barrett and his group made it out of the city too, and that means that if the remake follows the old game, Yuffie will meet them in a forest, steal their materia, and eventually team up with them in Wutai. The question is, will things follow the same path as before? We'll just have to wait and see, but for now, we've reached the end of this story. If you've enjoyed it, hit the like button, subscribe, ding that notification bell, and if you really want to show your support, you can donate to the channel through the link in the description. Until next time, guys. Later. While Peter's swinging through the city, he gets a call from Chief Clark, whose team is about to demolish a hospital that Sandman ruined during his not-so-little rampage. But the building's unstable, so he wants Peter to use his webs to help keep everything from collapsing early. Peter's got a bit of time, so he heads over there to help. By the time he gets there, they've already set the explosives in most of the sectors, but the last one collapses with the crew inside, so Peter gets to whip out some of his tech to perform a rescue operation. Namely his remote-controlled spider robot that's small enough to slip through the vents and track down the firefighters who got trapped. That way their crew members can know exactly where they are. The robot is strong enough to move some debris and it can hover a bit, so Peter's able to track down the people without too much trouble. But it turns out there was another guy trapped in the building that wasn't a part of the fire team, so Peter goes deeper into the horribly torn up building to look for him. It turns out that there are actually a lot of people in the building, and they've been digging through the building's resources looking for stuff, which is what made it start collapsing faster. Peter overhears them talking, and apparently they are part of a cult called the Followers of the Flame who like to blow things up. Since this building's already gonna explode soon, they don't have to do too much work, but they plan on finding the guy who tried to leave their group before the demolition happens. They catch the guy and they're about to kill him because the only way that anyone quits their cult is by dying painfully. The guy is just lucky that Spider-Man came busting into the room and saves him by doing what he usually does and giving severe injuries to everyone in the room. The cultists claim they have a prophecy that said they would have to face him eventually, and they even have a name for him, the Fool's Beacon. He likes the fact that he's in a prophecy, but he's not too big of a fan of the name or the fact that his part is to apparently burn to death with everyone else, so he proceeds to punch them all until they stop moving. One of them is about to get away, but he's knocked out by a woman in purple, who shows up and reveals a strange mark on one of the cultist's arms that appears after she lights a fire painfully close to it. It turns out that the woman is Yuri, the former cop who worked with Peter during the Devil's Breath incident, before she got disillusioned with the justice system and started putting down criminals in a more permanent sense. Now the criminal she hunts calls her Wraith. Peter wants to know where she's been, but all of the fighting's made the building start to collapse. Wraith is perfectly fine with leaving all of the unconscious cultists to die, but Peter manages to get them all out before they're crushed to death. Later, Yuri gives him a call to let him know that she's tracked the Followers of the Flame to an abandoned clinic in Chinatown, and he can come over to help her deal with them if he wants. Since she makes it pretty clear that she plans on killing the people, Peter decides to tag along to keep her in line. Yuri's been tracking this cult for weeks, which wasn't hard once she got on their trail since they leave a lot of dead bodies behind. They're focused on something called the Crimson Hour, but she has no idea what that means. She figures that whatever it is won't matter if she can get her hands on their leader. From the look of things, the cultists haven't been in the city for long, but they've had enough time to get some doors that won't open unless people have the right combination of symbols on their arms. Since Peter and Yuri have knocked out quite a few of these fanatics on their infiltration mission, they don't have a hard time getting into the main base where they see some of the cult members locking up some people who tried to run away. Apparently, a lot of people didn't realize that joining a cult was bad until after they were members, because clearly people who spend all of their time setting things on fire are perfectly normal friends to have. Fortunately for them, Peter and Yuri let them out of their cells, but hitting the button opens up a Skype call with the leader of the cult, a man who calls himself the Flame and who looks a whole lot like Jake Paul for some reason, and he apparently knows Yuri personally. Leading this cult is apparently not his first rodeo, but Yuri plans on making it his last if he tells her where he is. In what has to be the most obvious lead into a trap ever, he tells her that he's holed up in an old hospital in North Astoria, and if they live through the onslaught of men he sends into the room to kill them, he'll be waiting there for them. Beating the cult members is light work, so much so that Yuri has time to tell Peter how she met the Flame while they're crippling crazy people. She had hunted him down when she was a cop, but he'd gotten away, and when she'd gotten close to him and his last group, he had killed each and every one of his followers so they wouldn't be able to talk to the cops. After that, he had disappeared until he showed back up with this new group, but they're different from the last crew. They're wild and loud, like they don't care if people come after them, which makes them even more dangerous. That's why once all of the prisoners are free, Yuri wants to head straight to the hospital. It's so obviously a trap that Peter manages to convince her that she should at least scout the area around the place first, and they should go in together. She scouts it out, but she doesn't wait for him, so by the time Peter gets there, she's already taken out the first set of guards and went inside. Granted, she didn't kill them, but Peter knows that if she gets her hands on the Flame, he won't be so lucky, so he books it inside. He finds her right as she's in the middle of brutally questioning the Flame, who was actually right where he said he'd be. When she sees Peter, she stabs the Flame in the side, which causes Peter to attack her. Now, I'm no medical expert, but I'm pretty sure that getting a foot-long curved blade rammed into your side will do way too much damage for you to stop yourself from bleeding out by just putting some pressure on it. But Peter keeps the Flame alive by webbing his wound closed and tries to get him out of the building before Yuri can finish him off. That gives the man the opportunity to use his detonator and blow up the room they had been in. That also lets Yuri catch up to them, so Peter webs the Flame up and fights Yuri to keep her from murdering the violent psychopath who has murdered hundreds of people, and he will definitely murder more. Yuri accuses Peter of being someone who cares more about being good than actually doing good, because if he really wanted to help people, he'd put an end to violent criminals permanently. She is perfectly fine with losing sleep over the villain that she kills versus thinking about all of the people that she let die by not doing what was right. Unfortunately, neither one of them will get to deal with the Flame because by the time they finish fighting and make it outside, he's gotten out of Peter's webs and escaped, which means they both have to start the hunt for him over. And this time Yuri's gonna do it on her own, meaning it's a race. If she finds the guy first, she's definitely gonna kill him, so Peter's determined to not let that happen. Since Genki monitors everything, he knows that Peter's been fighting the followers of the Flame. So when he sees reports saying that some of them have been seen on the roof of a building in Brooklyn, he sends Peter the location. Peter doesn't find them there, but he does see some of their stuff, including a map that shows that they've been watching a local scrapyard. They also seem to have some interest in Oscorp, which likely won't lead to anything good either, so Peter swings off to the scrapyard. The cultists are there setting up a whole lot of bombs and gas canisters, which, considering the fact that all of the buildings around the place are full of people, the death toll will be super high if the scrapyard explodes, so Peter does what he does best and neutralizes the cultists while disarming the bombs. He gets rid of 4 of them before the other cultists notice that they're going offline, and they come out of the building to investigate. Yuri shows up too and joins Peter in taking down the cultists while the Flame watches the fight from somewhere and taunts the 2 of them over the loudspeaker. Yuri had been trying to find out where the man was broadcasting from, but she couldn't find him, which is weird because since this is the beginning of his so-called Crimson Hour, she would have expected him to be there. He clearly has another trick up his sleeve, and the 2 of them figure out what it is just a little too late. The bombs weren't the thing that was going to cause the big explosion. A train from Oscorp was scheduled to ride into the scrapyard, so the cultists cut its brakes. With all of the fuel strategically placed around the scrapyard, the train crashing at full speed would blow up the entire area. It's moving too fast for Peter to stop it with his webs, so he and Yuri improvise and use the cultist bombs to derail it. It still would have hit the explosives, but Peter uses some muscle power to slow it down, but it stops on top of him, pinning him to the ground. That's when the Flame shows up and reveals his true plan. He'd heard about what Oscorp had been working on with their treatment for Harry Osborn. At first he thought it was just another suit that would give somebody super strength, which didn't make it all that special. But when the monsters started appearing around the city and Oscorp sent some of their special medicine out for safekeeping, the Flame decided to get it for himself. See, the train that Peter just stopped was carrying that extra treatment. a red symbiote that the Flame thought would be a perfect tool to help bring in the true Crimson Hour and the time when he can unleash carnage on the unworthy. He then proceeds to set Peter on fire and hop in a helicopter and leave. Lucky for him, instead of chasing after the Flame, Yuri saves Peter's life before heading off to track the man down again. A man whose name is Cletus Cassidy, better known by all Spider-Man fans as Carnage, which means we're in for some very bloody mayhem in the future. But for now, the story's over. So if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, share it, and subscribe. Donate to the channel if you can, and I'll see you all next time.